So we're starting the show with the book of Acts. I really like Acts just because it is what happens right after Jesus ascends. Mm-hmm. And like the first chapter, Luke does a really good job at just documenting what happens. And I love this scene where you have an angel that is standing right next to all the guys who just watched Jesus ascend. They're all looking up in the sky, and the angels just kind of like, guys, what are y'all doing? And they're just dumbfounded about what just happened. Some of them, like, this was their rabbi, like the dude they've been doing ministry with and having dinner with and just going around adventures in Israel with for the past 3 years, and he is now gone. I mean, it's also kind of it would stop people in their tracks if they saw a man floating up into the sky.
No, for sure. That's not something to see every day. I don't.
But I just love how it starts with some action.
Yeah.
It starts with action. The angel's there. He says, guys, what are you looking at? You have your orders? Let's go get it. And they do. And one thing that's not really mentioned in the first part of Acts is you have like the first year of time takes place. So Jesus ascends the next year. These guys are hanging out in Jerusalem. Like, I didn't know that until my dad pointed it out. But like they go to the upper room, like that's like within a day.
Yeah.
Or two. And like Pentecost happens, I think when I was looking at it, about 10 days later.
Yeah.
Even though it was 50 days after, is it Passover?
At least after probably the death of Jesus. I thought it was like they were in the upper room for 40 days.
I could have been it.
Is it like, hold on, does it say it? Doesn't, I feel like I've heard like a 40-day thing for the upper room.
Well,
I'm not sure though.
You have 40 days of Passover, and then like you have 10 more days at Pentecost.
Okay.
I think that's what it was. Okay, time out. This is a moment where someone on the show misspoke or has embarrassed themselves to the point of needing extra grace. Introducing the Grace Counter. The Grace Counter is a system that keeps track of how many times a host or guest has fallen so far that Jesus needs to pick them back up. Who would have thought we'd need it this early? Passover only lasts 7 to 8 days, and the Ascension happens 40 days after Easter, which happens very close to Passover. 10 days after the Ascension, we have Pentecost.
Yeah.
Yes, that makes some sense. But yeah, so what do you like about Acts?
Acts, I haven't read Acts in a long time. I like it just because I just love Paul. I think he's just a cool character to just basically emulate my life as best as I can off of, and his, not only just his boldness but just his ability to really stand for what he believes. I love how in the end, in the middle or end of Acts, he's just debating with the apostles. I feel like a normal believer would just basically pee their pants in front of Peter, because he was with Jesus. But Paul, who's someone who probably didn't meet Jesus, I'm pretty sure, but didn't meet him until his conversion.
Right, you have the conversion period, but he didn't walk with Jesus.
He didn't walk with Jesus while he was still doing his ministry on earth in the flesh. So I just love his boldness to just come up to these guys who've been with Jesus for so long and did his ministry with they saw the gospel happen. They saw the gospels happen in real time, and he just went for it. He was just this is what I believe God is telling me. And without that boldness, a lot of the New Testament wouldn't even exist because of what Paul said and believed.
Right.
So most of the New Testament is Paul's convictions, and if the church had shut him down early, who knows what he would have done,
Yeah. Yeah. I really like that, where we get most of the information in Acts. I mean, it's obviously Luke wrote it, but Luke got his info because he traveled with Paul.
Yeah. And
then there's also Paul and Luke's meeting with John and Mary. So we have the Ascension. You have not the Ascension. You have the crucifixion. When Jesus says to John, son, meet your mother, mother, meet your son, or however exactly they said it. At that point, now Mary is John's responsibility, and John needed to go into hiding. And I think where they hid was Ephesus, or somewhere right outside of Ephesus.
Okay.
And we think that Paul and Luke, with I think a couple other folks that traveled with them, or just visited that church and kind of went the same path they did, they would stop and check on John and Mary. And I think that's where Luke got a lot of some of the stuff that's in Acts just with Paul, but also his gospel.
Yeah.
He got a lot of the stuff from Mary.
From talking to Mary.
Yeah, because if you look at all the details, it's like, how do you get that specific?
Yeah.
I mean, you get that from the source, which is Mary. But
sure.
yeah, that's just an interesting little tidbit about it. When I was looking up who Theophilus was, I think it was Bob Udley's teaching on this first chapter of Acts.
Theophilus is that guy like who Luke was writing to, or like
yes, like that's the guy Luke was writing to. He wrote the Gospel to Theophilus, and then this is like volume 2.
Yeah,
it's like this is part 2. We're gonna keep this going.
First one was good. Let's write a sequel.
Right. Let's see what it says. The whole what it is.
It's like the first verse.
Right, but there are a couple of words that they may not say it in certain versions. It says Theophilus. Most excellent Theophilus is what it uses in a lot of versions, and I think it uses that in Luke's gospel.
Yeah,
but that most excellent, or the words that he uses, are found when referring to like a Roman official.
Okay,
and so even though it doesn't say a lot of who Theophilus was, does it use it?
Yeah, in Luke it says most. In my NIV, and it says in NIV it says most excellent Theophilus in verse 3, but in Acts it just says Theophilus.
Okay, yeah,
but it still said it at one point.
So the most excellent part was for Roman officials, like how you addressed them.
Yeah.
And so the speculation is this could have been someone that Luke was trying to convert, or just maybe someone who knew Luke that was in the Roman guard, or how however their system works, and he was just communicating what happened to him, like getting it written down. Some folks believe that Theophilus was someone who helped them publish their work. And so this was kind of like, hey, let's get you up to speed on what we're about to send you.
Yeah.
And so Luke sent him his gospel, obviously Acts. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of the other books got sent to him or someone within his group to just kind of help get it out there.
So is he himself a believer, or was he just like willing to help anyway? Do you know? Off the top of your head,
I don't know.
Okay.
And I think it depends on which way you take it. I think he could have been.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me.
It'd be kind of random for just a guard to receive the gospel out of nowhere.
Send out what their people would have seen as like false god stuff.
As long the time it takes for you to write this, and then get it out there, and also the value of it.
Yeah,
you don't want to just send that to a stranger. So I think it was someone who they knew.
Yeah,
and remember, it's written kind of after the fact. Or at least during, like when it was fully completed. I think that was when when finally sent it out.
Yeah, no, I remember reading for like I was in this Bible as literature class at A&M my freshman year, and one of the things that it pointed out when we were like literally looking at Acts as like a piece of writing, not necessarily like Holy Scripture that is seen as written by God and stuff.
Yeah.
One thing that it like pointed out, and I think the textbook, or at least the prof pointed out, was like its change in like tense and use of pronouns throughout the entire thing. Like it'll go from like me and Paul were doing something, like Luke and Paul were doing this together, to like this happened and it seemed like more drawn back. I don't know if tense necessarily changed off the top of my head. I think it might have, but it definitely like there's a change in like style of how it was written throughout. I don't know if it's like a distinct line, but I know that like in the beginning it was definitely more like we did this in the beginning of Paul's ministry, and by the end there's points where it's like Paul did this.
That would be very interesting to look into, just to see if some of Luke's character comes out a little more with those areas when he was with Paul and he was in part of the action, because he definitely recorded what Peter did and what Philip did and a bunch of other folks in there.